Hey everyone, welcome to the exciting world of Azure. Azure is Microsoft's cloud platform. It's like a giant data center in the sky, but way cooler. You can use Azure to host websites, store data, run applications, and so much more. But with great power comes great responsibility. That's where Azure Identities and Governance come in. Imagine this. You have a team of people working on different parts of your Azure environment. You want to make sure that only the right people have access to the right resources. That's exactly what we'll cover in this guide. We'll learn about the tools and techniques you need to manage your Azure environment like a pro. Ready to dive in? Let's go. First up, let's talk about Azure Active Directory, or AAD for short. Think of AAD as the guardian of your Azure kingdom. It's the identity and access management service for Azure. AAD stores information about your users, groups, and applications. It uses this information to verify identities and control access to Azure resources. It's like a digital bouncer, making sure that only authorized users get into the Azure party. Now, let's meet the stars of the show. Users and groups. Users are individual accounts, like your employees or customers. Each user has a unique identity in AAD. Groups are collections of users. You can use groups to manage access permissions for multiple users at once. For example, you might create a group called Marketing Team and give them access to your marketing-related Azure resources. Now that we know who our users are, let's talk about how we control their access to Azure resources. That's where Role-Based Access Control, or RBAC, comes in. RBAC lets you assign roles to users and groups. Each role has a set of permissions that determine what users can and cannot do with Azure resources. For example, you might assign the contributor role to your developers, giving them permission to create and manage resources in a specific Azure subscription. Section 5. Subscriptions. Organizing your Azure resources. Subscriptions are like containers for your Azure resources. They help you organize your resources and manage costs. You can create multiple subscriptions within your Azure account. Each subscription has its own set of resources and billing information. For example, you might create separate subscriptions for your development, testing, and production environments. Section 6. Management Groups, taking control at scale. What if you have a lot of subscriptions? That's where management groups come in. Management groups let you organize your subscriptions into a hierarchy. You can apply policies and RBC settings at the management group level, which will then inherit down to all the subscriptions within that group. This makes it easy to manage access and governance for a large number of subscriptions at scale. Section 7. Putting it all together. A practical example. Let's say you're a company with a development team and an operations team. You want to use Azure to host your web application. You create two subscriptions, one for development and one for production. You create two management groups, development and production, and place the corresponding subscriptions under each group. You create two AAD groups, developers and operations. You assign the contributor role to the developers group in the development management group. You assign the reader role to the developers group in the production management group. You assign the contributor role to the operations group in both management groups. This way, developers can fully manage resources in the development environment, but can only view resources in the production environment. The operations team has full control over both environments. Section 8. Best practices for Azure Identity and Governance. Here are a few tips to keep in mind as you manage your Azure environment. Use strong passwords and multi-factor authentication, or MFA, for all your users. MFA adds an extra layer of security by requiring users to provide a second form of verification, like a code from their phone. Follow the principle of least privilege. Only give users the permissions they need to do their jobs. Use Azure Policy to enforce governance rules across your subscriptions. Azure Policy lets you define rules and automatically enforce them, ensuring that your environment stays compliant and secure. Regularly review your access permissions and make adjustments as needed. Section 9. Conclusion. Your journey to Azure Mastery. Congratulations! You've completed this crash course on Azure Identities and Governance. You've learned about AAD, RBAC, subscriptions and management groups. All the essential tools you need to manage your Azure environment securely and efficiently. Remember, proper identity and governance management is crucial for the security and compliance of your Azure resources. So go forth, use your newfound knowledge, and conquer the Azure cloud.